It's been almost 3 years since he last came here.
I used to live here. This was my house. It was burned down.
Rigen and his family abandoned their house in November 2016. The Pool region where they live was then the site of a brutal war between armed militiamen, the so-called lingers, who opposed the re-election of President Denis Sassou Nguesso, and government forces. Along with about a third of the local population, Rigen, his wife and their 4 children fled the violence and took refuge in neighbouring DR Congo.
There were military vehicles driving past every day. We heard shooting over there in the village. So we took a bag full of the children's clothes, as well as 2 of my trousers, and we fled on foot.
Rigen returned to his native land a year later, just before a ceasefire was implemented. He now rents this little house and survives on odd jobs. But with only days until the next election, he once again fears for his family.
We're afraid of buying things for the house because there are always problems in the Congo. At every single election, and we're tired of it.
Like Rigen, most of the 138,000 people who were displaced by the conflict have now returned to the Pool region. The area is also slowly regaining its status as Congo's breadbasket. Food production had collapsed during the war, plunging the local population into a major food crisis. These fish ponds have been rehabilitated with the support of the Congolese government and the UN, and now supply the region's food markets.
The people of the Pool region and the farmers consume the food that they themselves produce.
While economic recovery provides much-needed relief for the population, the wounds remain raw in the Pool region after 2 decades of conflict. The Lingers were formed in the early 1990s by the opponent Bernard Kolela and came under the command of Frédéric Binsamou, also known as Paston Tumi, when Kolela fled into exile after the 1997 civil war. Fighting continued until 2003 and resumed in 2016. Paston Tumi's role was controversial, with some accusing him of being manipulated by the government. In 2018, the Lingers finally gave up their weapons, but many are yet to be reintegrated into society. This welding workshop is one of a few to offer them vocational training.
Until now, we haven't received any money. We've been using our own funds. I have 28 young people under my care. I train them, I feed them, I even pay for their hospital fees. I pay for everything.
Dozens of unemployed former militiamen roam the streets of Minduli. They say they feel abandoned by the state.
When we gave up our weapons, we were expecting something in return. But it looks like President Sassou doesn't care about us. Maybe he thinks we're not Congolese.
We suffered during the war. They followed us into the forest and bombarded us with their helicopters. Our brothers were killed. We lost everything. And today, we continue to suffer.
The rest of the population, meanwhile, remains heavily traumatized by the conflict. For 2 years, the war was fought behind closed doors with no access given to journalists and humanitarian workers. The exact number of civilian casualties is not known, and few witnesses are willing to testify for fear of retaliation. This woman, who wished to remain anonymous, says her husband was kidnapped by masked men in uniforms back in 2017.
My husband was selling palm wine on the side of the road when 3 men stepped out of a vehicle and took him. They threw him onto the back of their pickup truck and they stamped on him as they stabbed him. I asked them why, and they told me he was a ninja. I said that's not true. He doesn't know how to use a weapon. That was the last time I saw him.
Rights groups say women and men were raped, abducted or killed during the war. Trésor Nzila documented some of these alleged crimes, which he says were committed by both sides.
We believe without a shadow of a doubt that these crimes amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity. This is what we're fighting for, the setting up of an independent investigative commission until justice has been served and until repatriations have been made. We will be stuck in a cycle of violence.
The Congolese government promised to set up an independent commission back in 2018, but it is yet to fulfill that promise. Meanwhile, authorities say they want to focus on strengthening peace in the Pool region.
We all need peace. The Congo has suffered too much and we must now turn the page and look towards the future. To do so, we need to develop the country. And to develop the country, we need peace in the Congo.
While peace seems to be holding for now, the traumas of the past have not yet been forgotten.